The fluorescent lights of Romano's buzzed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow over the black and white checkered floor. My feet ached in the cheap flats I'd bought at a discount store 3 days ago, already falling apart, the sole peeling away from the toe like a broken promise. I could feel every crack in the tile beneath me. As I moved between tables, my notepad clutched so tightly in my hand that my knuckles had gone white. "Table 7 needs water," Gina hissed as she breezed past me, her perfume, something expensive and floral, cutting through the smell of garlic and tomato sauce that clung to everything in this place. She'd been a waitress here for 5 years and wore her seniority like a crown. I was on day 3, and I could already feel the weight of her judgment every time I fumbled an order or forgot which side the bread plates went on. I grabbed the pitcher, my hands trembling slightly, not from nervousness about the job. I'd waited tables before, back when Mom was still alive, and I was juggling community college classes with whatever work I could find. No, this trembling was different. It was exhaustion, bone deep and relentless, the kind that came from sleeping on your best friend's couch for 2 months while trying to scrape together enough money for a security deposit on an apartment, the kind that came from eating ramen noodles 3 times a day and pretending you weren't hungry when someone offered you their leftovers out of pity. Table 7 was in the back corner, the one they called the VIP section, even though it was just the same red vinyl booths as everywhere else, only slightly more private. As I approached with the water pitcher, I noticed the sudden shift in atmosphere. The air felt heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. 2 men in dark suits flanked the entrance to the section, their eyes scanning the restaurant with the kind of vigilance that made my stomach tighten. And then I saw him. He sat with his back to the wall, of course he did, in a suit that probably cost more than I'd make in 6 months, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, with a crisp white shirt beneath and no tie. His dark hair was swept back, touched with silver at the temples, and even from a distance, I could see the sharp line of his jaw, the way his presence seemed to command the very air around him. 2 other men sat across from him, but they might as well have been furniture. Everything in that corner gravitated toward him. I shouldn't have been the one serving this table. Gina always took the VIP section. But she was in the bathroom reapplying her lipstick, and Marco, our manager, had grabbed my elbow and shoved me in that direction with a whispered, "Just water. Don't screw it up." My heart hammered against my ribs as I approached. One of the suited guards stepped forward, his hand moving slightly toward his jacket, and I froze. "Water," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. I held up the pitcher like a white flag. The guard looked past me to the table. I didn't see the signal, but there must have been one, because he stepped aside with a slight nod. I moved forward on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Up close, I could smell him, not cologne exactly, but something else. Cedar and smoke and something darker, like aged leather and secrets. The 2 men across from him were talking in low voices about shipments and percentages, words that slid over me without meaning as I focused on not spilling water all over the pristine white tablecloth. I filled the first glass, then the second. My hand was steadier than I'd expected, some muscle memory from my previous waitressing jobs kicking in. I was reaching for the 3rd glass, the one in front of him, when my phone rang. Not vibrated. Rang, the shrill, desperate sound of my ringtone, some default melody I'd never bothered to change, cut through the low murmur of conversation like a knife. I jerked back instinctively, the water pitcher tilting, and I watched in horror as water sloshed over the rim of the glass I'd just filled, spreading across the tablecloth in a dark, damning stain. The conversation stopped. Everything stopped. My phone kept ringing. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, setting down the pitcher with shaking hands. I grabbed the napkin from the nearest place setting and dabbed uselessly at the water, but my phone was still ringing, still screaming from the pocket of my apron, and I could feel the eyes on me, the guards, the men at the table, and worst of all, his eyes. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers clumsy with panic. I should have silenced it. I should have ignored it. But the number on the screen made my breath catch. St. Mary's Hospital. And before I could think, before I could remember where I was or who I was standing in front of, I swiped to answer. Hello? Is this Emma Chen? The voice was brisk, professional, with an undercurrent of urgency that made my stomach drop. Yes. I'm working. Ms. Chen, this is St. Mary's Hospital. Your friend Sarah Mitchell was brought in 30 minutes ago. You're listed as her emergency contact. We need you to come down as soon as possible. The restaurant tilted around me. Sarah. Sweet, quiet Sarah who'd let me crash on her couch, who'd lent me money for my uniform, who'd promised me that things would get better. What happened? My voice cracked. Is she? I can't discuss details over the phone, but you need to come now. I was vaguely aware that I was still standing at the table, that I was having this conversation in front of him, in front of all of them. But Sarah's name was pounding in my head, drowning out everything else. I'll be right there, I said, and ended the call. For a moment, I just stood there, my phone clutched in my hand, the water stain spreading on the tablecloth in front of me. Then reality crashed back in. Where I was, what I'd done, the absolute disaster of the last 2 minutes. I'm so sorry, I whispered again, looking anywhere but at him. I have to. There's an emergency. I'm so sorry about the water. I'll pay for... I turned to flee, but Marco was already there, his face purple with rage. What the hell do you think you're doing? He hissed, grabbing my arm hard enough to bruise. You do not answer your phone in the middle of service. You do not... My friend's in the hospital. The words came out flat, emotionless. I was too overwhelmed to feel anything anymore. I have to go. You walk out that door, you're fired. You hear me? Fired. I looked at him, at his red face and his cheap suit and his small angry eyes, and I felt nothing. Sarah was worth 1,000 of these jobs, 1,000 of these moments. Fine, I said, and pulled my arm free. I was halfway across the restaurant, untying my apron with shaking fingers, when I heard it. A voice I hadn't heard speak before, low and measured and absolutely cold. Marco. Just that. Just his name. But the restaurant manager stopped mid-rant, his mouth hanging open, and turned toward the VIP table like a puppet on strings. I should have kept walking. I should have pushed through those doors and never looked back. But something made me pause, made me glance over my shoulder. He was standing now. And standing, he was taller than I'd expected. The 2 men who'd been sitting across from him had gone quiet, their eyes lowered. The guards had straightened to attention. And Marco looked like he might pass out. The man in the charcoal suit didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The girl, he said, his eyes finding me across the restaurant. Don't let her leave. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. My heart, which had been racing before, now stopped completely. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run, to push through those doors and disappear into the city streets, but my feet had turned to lead. One of the guards was already moving toward the entrance, blocking it with his considerable bulk. My voice failed me. I tried again. My friend. She's in the hospital. I have to... He moved then, crossing the restaurant with a grace that seemed impossible for a man his size. The other diners watched with a mixture of fear and fascination, their conversations dying as he passed. When he reached me, he stopped just close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could see the small scar that cut through his left eyebrow. Which hospital? His voice was quieter now, meant only for me, but it still carried that undercurrent of absolute authority. St. Mary's, but I don't understand why. He turned to one of his guards without taking his eyes off me. Call ahead. Private room. Make sure she has the best doctors. Then to me. You'll go. but not alone. I don't need... You spilled water on a $30,000 suit, he said, and there might have been the ghost of amusement in his voice, though his expression remained unreadable. You answered your phone in the middle of service, and now you're going to walk out of here without so much as an explanation to the owner of this establishment. My blood ran cold. You own, among other things. He gestured to the door, where another car was already pulling up. A sleek black sedan with tinted windows. My driver will take you. You'll go see your friend, and when you're done, you'll come back here. We have things to discuss. I'm fired. Marco says what I tell him to say. He looked over at the manager, who'd gone from purple to white. Isn't that right, Marco? Yes, Mr. Volkov. Of course, Mr. Volkov. Volkov. The name hit me like a physical blow. I'd heard that name before, whispered in the break room, mentioned in news reports that cut off abruptly when anyone walked in. Volkov. As in the Volkov family, as in the organization that ran half the city from the shadows. I'd spilled water on a Mafia boss. I'd answered my phone in front of a Mafia boss. And now he was sending me to the hospital in his private car to visit my friend, with instructions to come back so we could discuss things. Every self-preservation instinct I had screamed at me to refuse, to run, to disappear into whatever hole I could find and never come out. But Sarah was in the hospital, possibly dying, and I had no money for a cab, and the buses would take an hour, and... Tick-tock, Emma. He said my name like he'd known it all along, and I realized with a start that he probably had. That he probably knew everything about me within minutes of my clumsy, disastrous intrusion into his evening. Your friend is waiting. I looked at the door, at the car idling outside with its promise of speed and efficiency, and all the things I couldn't afford. I looked at him, at the cold calculation in his eyes, and the slight curl of his lips that might have been a smile in another man but seemed more like a predator baring its teeth. I should have said no. I should have walked away. Instead, I heard myself say, "Okay." His smile widened, just a fraction. Smart girl. The guard opened the door for me, and I walked out into the cooling evening air, my cheap flats scuffing against the sidewalk as I approached the sedan. The driver was already out, opening the back door, his face as impassive as stone. I climbed in, and the door shut behind me with a soft, final click. Through the tinted window, I could see Romano's, the restaurant I'd worked at for 3 days, the restaurant I'd thought was just another dive in a city full of them. I could see the people inside going back to their meals, the moment of drama already fading into background noise. And I could see him, standing in the doorway, his hands in his pockets, watching the car with an expression I couldn't read. The driver pulled away from the curb, and I sank back into leather seats that probably cost more than my entire life's possessions. My phone felt heavy in my hand. My apron was still clutched in the other, water-stained and wrinkled. And somewhere in the back of my mind, beneath the worry for Sarah and the shock of the last 10 minutes, a small voice whispered, "What have you done?" The hospital lights were too bright, too sterile, washing everything in a harsh white glow that made my eyes ache. I'd been here for 3 hours, sitting in an uncomfortable plastic chair outside Sarah's room, while doctors came and went with clipboards and grave expressions. The driver, he'd told me to call him Anton, waited at the end of the hallway, his broad frame blocking the corridor like a human wall. He hadn't said more than 10 words to me during the entire drive, but his presence was impossible to ignore. Sarah had collapsed at work, a brain aneurysm, they said. The words had felt foreign in my mouth when I repeated them to myself, trying to make them real. She was in surgery now, had been for the past 2 hours, and all I could do was sit here with my hands folded in my lap and pray to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "How is your friend?" I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. How did he get my number? But even as I asked myself the question, I knew how stupid it was. He probably knew my social security number, my bank balance, all negative $47 of it, and every address I'd lived at for the past 10 years. In surgery, I typed back. They don't know if she'll make it. The response came within seconds. She'll have the best care. I've made sure of it. I looked up at Anton, who was still standing guard, and wondered how many strings had been pulled in the last 3 hours. How many doctors had been called in, how many favors had been cashed, all because I'd spilled water on the wrong man's suit. "Why are you doing this?" I texted. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Finally, we'll discuss it when you return." My stomach twisted. The words weren't a suggestion, they were a command wrapped in polite language, and we both knew it. A doctor emerged from the surgical wing, still in his scrubs, and my heart jumped into my throat. I stood so quickly the chair scraped against the linoleum floor. "Miss Chen?" He looked exhausted, but there was something in his eyes that made me breathe again. "Your friend is stable. The surgery went well, all things considered. The next 48 hours will be critical, but she's a fighter." I pressed my hand to my mouth, feeling tears burn behind my eyes. "Can I see her?" "She's in recovery now. Give us another hour to get her settled in ICU. Then you can sit with her for a few minutes." He glanced at Anton, then back at me, and I wondered what he'd been told about who was paying for all of this. "She's lucky to have you, and lucky that we had Dr. Morrison available. He's one of the best neurosurgeons on the East Coast. Normally he's booked months in advance." "Thank you," I whispered. But the gratitude felt hollow. Dr. Morrison hadn't appeared out of the goodness of his heart. He'd appeared because Dmitry Volkov had made a phone call, and when a man like that called, people answered. The doctor nodded and walked away, leaving me standing in the middle of the hallway with Anton's eyes on my back. I turned to face him, this silent sentinel who'd been watching me for hours. "I need to call someone," I said, "to let them know about Sarah." Anton pulled out his phone and handed it to me without a word. It was the kind of gesture that would have been kind in any other context. But here, now, it felt like another thread in an invisible web being woven around me. I called Sarah's sister in Portland, delivering the news as gently as I could, promising to keep her updated. When I hung up, Anton took his phone back and resumed his position against the wall. "How long have you worked for him?" I asked, not sure why I was trying to make conversation, except that the silence was suffocating. Anton's expression didn't change. "Long enough." "Is he always involved with strangers?" Something flickered in Anton's eyes. Amusement, maybe, or pity. "Mr. Volkov is never involved with anything without reason." The words settled over me like a shroud. Before I could ask what he meant, my phone buzzed again. "It's time to come back." I looked at the message, then at the surgical wing where Sarah lay unconscious, breathing through tubes and monitored by machines that beeped in steady, reassuring rhythms. "I can't leave her," I said to Anton. He pushed off the wall and approached me, his footsteps silent despite his size. "There's a nurse who will call you if anything changes. Mr. Volkov has arranged for round-the-clock private care. Your friend won't be alone. That's not the point. Ms. Chen." Anton's voice was gentle but firm. "Mr. Volkov doesn't like to wait." The unspoken threat hung in the air between us. I thought about running, about disappearing into the hospital's maze of corridors and emergency exits. But where would I go? Back to Sarah's apartment, where I had no key and no right to be anymore. To another friend's couch, dragging my problems with me like a stone around my neck. And more than that, more than my own fear or survival instinct, was the uncomfortable truth that Dmitry Volkov had saved Sarah's life tonight. Whatever his reasons, whatever he wanted from me, he'd made sure my best friend had gotten care that would have been impossible otherwise. The bill for tonight alone would have bankrupted me for the rest of my life. I owed him, and he knew it. "Let me see her first," I said quietly. "Just for a minute. Then I'll go." Anton checked his phone, presumably getting permission, then nodded. 5 minutes. Sarah looked so small in the hospital bed, dwarfed by machines and monitors, her dark hair spread across the pillow like ink on snow. I took her hand carefully, mindful of the IV line, and felt the warmth of her skin beneath my fingers. Alive. She was alive. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. For not being there when she collapsed. For the choices I was about to make. For bringing whatever storm was coming into both of our lives. Her fingers twitched in mine, the tiniest movement, and I chose to believe it was her way of saying she understood. "I'll come back," I promised. "As soon as I can, and I'll fix this. Whatever I have to do, I'll fix it." The words felt like a vow, and as I left the room with Anton's hand hovering near my elbow, not touching, never touching, but always there, I wondered what exactly I'd just promised, and to whom. The drive back to Romano's felt longer than the drive to the hospital. Every red light an eternity. Every block a small death. The city at night was a different animal than during the day. Shadows stretched longer, neon signs bled their colors into puddles on wet pavement, and the people on the sidewalks moved with the kind of wariness that came from knowing danger could be lurking around any corner. The restaurant was closed when we arrived, the neon sign dark, chairs upturned on tables visible through the windows. Anton led me not to the front entrance, but to a side door I'd never noticed before, one that required a key card to open. We went up a narrow staircase that smelled of old wood and expensive cigars, climbing 2 flights before emerging into a hallway that was nothing like the restaurant below. Here, the floors were hardwood, polished to a mirror shine. The walls were painted a deep burgundy, with paintings I suspected were originals hung at precise intervals. Sconces cast warm pools of light, and the air conditioning was set to exactly the right temperature, not too cold, not too warm. Anton stopped at a heavy oak door at the end of the hallway and knocked twice. A voice from within, his voice, said something in what I thought might be Russian, and Anton opened the door, gesturing for me to enter. The office was exactly what I would have expected, and nothing like it at the same time. Dark wood furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, a desk that looked like it belonged in a museum. But there were also modern touches, a state-of-the-art computer setup, multiple phones, and a window that overlooked the entire street below, with a view that would have cost millions in any other building. He stood by that window, his back to me, hands clasped behind him. He'd removed his suit jacket, and I could see the way his white shirt stretched across his shoulders, the suggestion of strength beneath the civilized veneer. "Thank you, Anton," he said without turning around. "That will be all." The door clicked shut behind me, and suddenly I was alone with him, truly alone. For the first time since that disastrous moment at the table, my heart hammered against my ribs, and I had to resist the urge to check if the door was locked. "Your friend will recover," he said, still facing the window. "Dr. Morrison is optimistic, thank you." The words felt inadequate, too small for what he'd done. I don't know how I can ever repay me. Now he turned, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. "That's what we're here to discuss." He moved to the desk and picked up a folder. Manila, unremarkable, the kind you could buy at any office supply store. But when he opened it, I saw my face staring back at me. A photo, recent, from my driver's license, and beneath it, pages of information about my life laid out in stark black and white. "Emma Rose Chen," he read aloud, his accent giving my name a different cadence. 26 years old, no living family, community college dropout, 7 different jobs in the past 3 years, none lasting more than 6 months. Current address? He paused, his eyes lifting to meet mine. "Well, you don't really have one, do you?" My face burned. "I didn't realize my employment history was any of your business." "Everything in my restaurants is my business." He set the folder down and leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. You walked into my establishment 3 days ago with a fake reference and a smile. Marco was too desperate for staff to check properly. I, however, am never that careless. If you knew I lied on my application, why didn't you fire me then? Because I was curious. He said it so simply, like curiosity was reason enough to let a fraud continue working in his restaurant. A girl willing to forge references to get a waitressing job that speaks of desperation, and desperate people are either dangerous or useful. I'm not dangerous. No, he agreed, his eyes traveling over me in a way that made me feel exposed, vulnerable. You're not. But you might be useful. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold, despite the perfect temperature. What do you want from me? He was quiet for a long moment, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Then he pushed off from the desk and crossed to a cabinet, pulling out a crystal decanter and 2 glasses. He poured amber liquid into both, whiskey from the smell, and held one out to me. I didn't take it. I don't drink. Tonight you do. It wasn't a suggestion. My hand shook as I accepted the glass. I didn't drink, brought it to my lips and let the liquid burn a path down my throat. It was smooth and expensive, and everything I'd never been able to afford, and I hated that even this small act felt like surrender. He took a sip from his own glass, watching me over the rim. There's a man, he said finally. His name is Viktor Kozlov. He worked for me once, handling shipments from overseas. Last month he decided my 30% wasn't enough. He thought he could skim off the top, hide his tracks, disappear with enough money to start over somewhere warm and sunny. I said nothing, unsure where this was going or why he was telling me any of this. He was wrong, Volkov continued. I found the discrepancy within days. But Victor, clever Victor, he'd already run. He's in the wind now, somewhere in this city, hiding like the rat he is. I don't understand what this has to do with me. Victor has a girlfriend. Had a girlfriend, I suppose, since he left her behind when he ran. He pulled another folder from his desk. This one containing a photo of a woman with blonde hair and sharp features. She was beautiful in a hard way, all angles and ambition. Her name is Irina. She's been calling my people, begging for a chance to make things right, claiming she had nothing to do with Victor's betrayal. Did she? His smile was cold. That's the question, isn't it? Irina swears she's innocent. That she had no idea what Victor was doing. That she's been as much a victim of his deception as I have. He set the photo down. I don't believe her. Then why not just... I stopped, not wanting to finish the thought. Kill her? He said it casually, like we were discussing the weather. Because dead women don't lead me to Victor. And Irina is going to lead me to him, one way or another. The problem is she knows she's being watched. My men have been following her for weeks, and she's too smart to make contact with Victor while she knows we're looking. Understanding began to dawn, cold and terrible. You want me to watch her. Not watch. Befriend. He moved closer. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. You need a job. You need money. You need a place to live. I can provide all of that. In return, you'll get close to Irina. You'll gain her trust. And when she finally reaches out to Victor, and she will, eventually, you'll tell me where he is. I'm not a spy. No, you're a waitress. A broke, desperate waitress who just had a very public emergency at my restaurant. Irina frequents a coffee shop 3 blocks from here, Costa's. They're hiring. You'll apply, you'll get the job, and you'll strike up a friendship with a woman who's just as alone and desperate as you are. He reached out, and I flinched, but he was only tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers barely grazing my skin. It's really very simple, and if I say no... His hand dropped, but he didn't step back. Then your friend Sarah will receive a very large hospital bill, one that her insurance, if she even has insurance, won't begin to cover. She'll wake up from surgery to find herself buried in debt that will follow her for the rest of her life. Is that what you want? The threat was delivered in the same calm, measured tone he'd used for everything else, which somehow made it worse. I thought of Sarah lying in that hospital bed, tubes and wires keeping her alive, and felt something inside me crack. That's not fair. No, he agreed. It's not, but fairness is a luxury neither of us can afford. I wanted to throw the whiskey in his face. I wanted to scream, to fight, to do anything other than stand there and accept this manipulation. But what choice did I have? Sarah was alive because of him. I was standing here, in this office, drinking his whiskey, because he'd decided to make me an offer instead of having Anton throw me out onto the street. How long? My voice came out steady, which surprised me. As long as it takes. Could be days. Could be weeks. And after, when you find Victor, then you're free. I'll clear Sarah's medical bills, give you enough money to start over somewhere new if that's what you want, and you'll never hear from me again. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. But the alternative, watching Sarah drown in debt while I went back to couch surfing and lying on job applications, wasn't really an alternative at all. I drained the rest of the whiskey, letting it burn away the last of my resistance. When do I start? His smile was triumphant, and I hated that I'd given him that victory. Tomorrow, Anton will take you to an apartment I own. Furnished, utilities included. Get some sleep. Be at Costa's by 9 a.m. to fill out an application. He moved back to his desk and pulled out a wallet, extracting several bills that he held out to me. For clothes. You'll need to look the part. I looked at the money. More cash than I'd seen in months, and felt something die inside me as I reached out and took it. One more thing, Emma. His voice stopped me as I turned toward the door. Irina is dangerous. She survived in this world by being smart and ruthless. Don't underestimate her, and don't, under any circumstances, let her know who you really work for. I don't work for you. Don't you? His eyes glittered with amusement. We'll see. Anton was waiting in the hallway when I emerged, and he led me back down the stairs in silence. The money felt heavy in my pocket. The weight of my choices felt heavier still. As the car pulled away from Romano's, I looked back at the dark windows and wondered what I'd just agreed to. What compromises I'd just made. What pieces of myself I'd just sold. The only answer was the city lights blurring past the window and Anton's silent presence in the front seat, driving me toward an apartment I hadn't earned and a future I couldn't see. The apartment was on the 4th floor of a building in a neighborhood I'd only ever walked through quickly, eyes down, trying not to look like I didn't belong. Anton unlocked the door and stepped aside, letting me enter first, and I stood in the doorway for a long moment before my feet would agree to carry me inside. It was beautiful. That was the first thought. Clean hardwood floors, white walls with crown molding, furniture that looked both modern and comfortable, a kitchen with actual counter space and appliances that weren't held together with duct tape. Through an open doorway, I could see a bedroom with a queen-sized bed covered in a soft gray duvet. Mr. Volkov had it prepared for you, Anton said, setting a key on the entrance table. There are clothes in the closet. He guessed your size. If anything doesn't fit, let me know. I walked further in, my cheap flat silent on the expensive floor. The windows overlooked the street below, curtains already drawn for privacy. There was a bookshelf with actual books, a TV mounted on the wall, even fresh flowers in a vase on the coffee table. It was perfect. It was a cage dressed up as kindness. The building has security, Anton continued. I'll be checking in regularly. If you need anything, my number is programmed into your phone. When did you program your number into my phone? He didn't answer, just gave me that look that suggested the question itself was naive. Of course he'd had access to my phone. Probably while I was sitting in the hospital, worrying about Sarah. Nothing was private anymore. Nothing was mine. Get some rest, he said, moving toward the door. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. When he left, the silence in the apartment felt oppressive. I walked through each room slowly, touching things like I needed to confirm they were real. The The bathroom had fluffy white towels and expensive soap. The kitchen was stocked with food, real food, not ramen noodles and expired crackers. The closet held clothes in my size, just as Anton had said. Jeans and simple tops, a jacket, even new shoes that didn't have peeling soles. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out the cash Volkov had given me. $500. More than I'd had in my bank account in over a year. Blood money, I thought, or maybe just the down payment on my soul. My phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. Sarah was stable, resting comfortably, no changes. They'd call if anything developed. Another text. This one from the unknown number I now knew belonged to him. Sleep well, Emma. Tomorrow you begin. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I set it carefully on the nightstand and lay back on the bed, still fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. The mattress was comfortable, the pillows soft, but sleep felt impossible. My mind kept circling back to that office, to Volkov's cold eyes and colder smile, to the choice that hadn't really been a choice at all. Somewhere in the city, Victor was hiding, and somewhere else, Irina was waiting, desperate and dangerous, a weapon Volkov wanted to aim at his missing accountant, and I was supposed to be the hand that pulled the trigger. I must have dozed eventually, because I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and my phone alarm blaring. 7 a.m., 2 hours to get ready and get to Costa's. The shower was hot, the water pressure perfect, and I hated how good it felt to finally be clean. I dressed in the new clothes, dark jeans that fit perfectly, a simple white top, the jacket that made me look almost put together. The new shoes were comfortable, broken in just enough that they wouldn't hurt after hours of standing. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. 3 days ago, I'd been sleeping on a couch, wearing clothes I'd washed in bathroom sinks. Now I looked like someone who had their life together, someone who belonged in this apartment, in this neighborhood. The lie of it made my stomach turn. Costa's Coffee was the kind of place that tried too hard to be authentic. Exposed brick walls, mismatched vintage furniture, a chalkboard menu with prices that made me wince. The morning crowd was thick, professionals grabbing lattes before work, students camping out with laptops, the low hum of conversation mixing with the hiss of the espresso machine. I stood outside for a full minute, gathering courage before pushing through the door. The smell of coffee and baked goods hit me immediately, triggering a hunger I'd been ignoring. When was the last time I'd eaten? Yesterday's lunch at Romano's felt like a lifetime ago. The girl behind the counter was young, maybe 20, with purple streaks in her dark hair and a tired smile. Help you? I heard you might be hiring. The words came out steadier than I felt. She looked me up and down, then shrugged. Manager's in the back. Hang on. She disappeared through a doorway, and I used the moment to scan the shop. That's when I saw her. Irina sat in the corner by the window, a laptop open in front of her, but her eyes weren't on the screen. They were distant, unfocused. Her coffee cup cradled in both hands like she was trying to draw warmth from it. She was even more striking in person than in the photo. Sharp cheekbones, blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, designer clothes that screamed money even in their simplicity. She looked lonely. That was the surprising part. Not dangerous or calculating, but genuinely, profoundly alone. You looking for work? A man emerged from the back, 50s, balding, wiping his hands on a towel. The manager, presumably. I tore my eyes away from Irina. Yes, I have experience. I've worked at... Can you start today? The question caught me off guard. Today? Girl who was supposed to open called in sick. If you can handle a rush and don't mind jumping in without training, the job's yours. $8.50 an hour plus tips. It was less than Romano's had paid, but that wasn't the point. Yes, I can start now. Great. I'm Pete. Come on, I'll show you the register. The The next 2 hours passed in a blur of coffee orders and frothing milk and trying to remember which buttons on the register did what. Pete was patient. More patient than Marco had ever been, walking me through each step without making me feel stupid. The purple-haired girl, Mia, covered for my mistakes with good-natured eye rolls and quick saves. And through it all, Irina sat in her corner, occasionally glancing at her phone, her coffee going cold, her laptop screen dimming from disuse. It was almost 11 when the morning rush finally died down. Mia took her break, and Pete retreated to the back to handle inventory, leaving me alone at the counter. I wiped down the espresso machine, arranged pastries in the display case, and tried not to stare at the woman by the window. She stood suddenly, gathering her things, and I knew this was my chance. If I let her leave without making contact, I'd have failed on my first day. Volkov would know. He always seemed to know everything. "Excuse me?" I called out before I could overthink it. Irina paused, looking at me with those sharp green eyes. "You forgot your phone charger." I pointed to the cord still plugged into the wall by her table. She glanced down, surprise flickering across her face. "Oh, thank you." She came to the counter to retrieve it, and up close I could see the fine lines of stress around her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly as she wound up the cord. I'd forget my head if it wasn't attached. "I do that all the time," I said, forcing a smile. "Left my keys in the door overnight once. Woke up to my neighbor knocking, asking if I was trying to invite burglars in." A small smile tugged at her lips. "At least you have good neighbors." "Had. I moved recently." The lie came easier than I'd expected. "Still getting used to the area, actually. Is this place usually this busy in the mornings?" "Like clockwork. 7 to 9:30 is insane, then it dies down until the lunch rush." She studied me, her gaze assessing. "You're new here." "First day. Is it that obvious?" "You haven't developed the dead-eyed stare yet." This time her smile was genuine, transforming her face. "Give it a week." I laughed, and it didn't even sound forced. "I'll try to hold out for at least 2 weeks before complete soul death." Ambitious. She shifted her bag on her shoulder. "I'm Irina." "Emma." "Well, Emma, welcome to the neighborhood. And if you survive Pete's training, you'll survive anything." She left, and I watched her go, feeling the weight of what I'd just done settle over me. First contact established. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for her to walk into it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't need to check it to know who it was from or what it would say. Well done. He was watching. Of course he was watching. Maybe through the security cameras I'd noticed in the corners of the shop, or maybe through someone sitting in one of the other cafes on the street. It didn't matter. The result was the same. I was performing for an audience I couldn't see, playing a role I'd never auditioned for. The rest of my shift passed in mechanical routine. Mia came back from break and talked about her boyfriend's band and how they had a gig next weekend. Pete showed me how to close out the register and warned me about the temperamental ice machine. Normal things. Regular things. The kind of workplace banter I'd had at a dozen other jobs, but nothing felt normal anymore. When I returned to the apartment that evening, there was a package waiting by the door. No return address, just my name written in neat block letters. Inside was a new phone, newer than the battered one I'd been using, with a note in handwriting I already recognized. For work purposes. Keep your personal phone separate. DV. I turned the new phone on and found it already programmed with 2 contacts. Anton and a number labeled simply DV. No other apps, no games, no personal touches. This was a leash dressed up as a gift, a way to keep me connected and controlled. A text came through immediately. Report. I sat on the couch and typed with heavy fingers. Made contact. She seems lonely. Willing to talk. We'll continue tomorrow. The response was instant. Good. Don't rush it. Let her come to you. Understood. How is your friend? The question surprised me. I checked my personal phone and saw updates from the hospital. Sarah was awake, groggy but stable. Her sister had arrived from Portland. Better, I typed back. Thank you. You're welcome. Sleep, Emma. You did well today. The praise felt like poison, sweet and deadly. I set both phones on the coffee table and stared at them, these tethers to two different versions of my life. One where I was Emma Chen, broke waitress trying to survive. Another where I was Emma Chen, informant for the Russian Mafia, lying to a woman who might be innocent. I didn't sleep well that night. When I did, I dreamed of cages made of expensive furniture and chains forged from hospital bills and obligation. And standing outside the cage, watching with those dark, calculating eyes, was Dmitry Volkov, holding a key he had no intention of ever using. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal, which was perhaps the most dangerous part. I'd wake in the apartment that wasn't mine, dress in clothes bought with blood money, and walk 3 blocks to Costa's where I'd spend 8 hours making coffee and learning the careful art of befriending someone I was meant to betray. Irina came in every day like clockwork. 10:30 in the morning, she'd order a cappuccino with an extra shot, find her usual table by the window, and spend hours staring at her laptop screen with the glazed expression of someone who wasn't really seeing anything at all. She was waiting, I realized, just like Volkov had predicted, waiting for some sign, some message, some indication that Victor hadn't completely abandoned her. I took my time. Let her come to you, Volkov had instructed, and so I did nothing more than smile when she came in, remember her order without her having to say it, occasionally make small talk about the weather or the rude customer who'd just left. Small kindnesses that cost me nothing and meant everything to someone as isolated as she was. You're getting good at this, Mia observed one afternoon, watching me foam milk with practiced ease. Pete's already talking about giving you more shifts. I need the money, I said, which was true enough even if the reasons weren't what she'd assume. Don't we all? She leaned against the counter, lowering her voice. That blonde woman who comes in every day. Irina, she tipped me $50 yesterday for a $4 coffee, just handed it over like it was nothing. Maybe she's lonely, I said carefully. Money doesn't buy companionship. No, but it buys a hell of a lot of coffee. Mia grinned. If you're smart, you'll cultivate that. Rich, lonely people make the best regulars. I thought about that conversation later, when Volkov texted asking for my daily report. She's waiting for something, I wrote, checking her phone constantly, nervous. Isolated. Has she mentioned Victor? No. She doesn't talk about herself much at all, then make her. The response was immediate, commanding. People who are alone want to talk. They just need someone to ask the right questions. I stared at the message, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. This was the moment. No more passive observation. Now I had to actively manipulate, to dig into wounds and exploit them. How? I texted back. You're a smart girl, Emma. Figure it out. The opportunity came 3 days later, on a rainy Thursday afternoon when the shop was nearly empty. Irina sat at her usual table, but instead of staring at her laptop, she had her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I looked around. Mia was on break. Pete was in the back. Just me and a crying woman, who I was supposed to be befriending for all the wrong reasons. I grabbed a napkin and a glass of water and crossed the shop before I could overthink it. Hey, I said softly, setting both on her table. Are you okay? She looked up, her makeup smeared, her eyes red. I'm fine. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. I pulled out the chair across from her without asking. Bad day? She laughed, a broken sound. Bad month. Bad year, really. Want to talk about it? I kept my voice gentle, concerned. I'm a good listener. Comes with the waitress territory. For a moment I thought she'd refuse. Her expression closed off, defensive walls slamming into place. But then something in her seemed to crack, and the words came spilling out. My boyfriend left me. She grabbed the napkin, dabbing at her eyes. Just disappeared one day, took all his things, emptied our joint account, and vanished. I keep thinking he'll call, that he'll explain, that there's some reason that makes sense. But it's been a month, and nothing. I felt like the worst kind of person. I'm so sorry. That's awful. The stupid thing is, I should have seen it coming. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the way he'd freeze whenever I asked about work. She took a shaky breath. I just didn't want to believe that the person I loved could do that to me. Have you tried to find him? Her laugh was bitter. Everywhere. Called all his friends, checked with his family, even hired a private investigator. It's like he never existed, like our entire relationship was just fiction. I reached across the table and took her hand, hating myself. You deserve better than that, do I? She looked at me with those sharp green eyes, and for a moment, I saw something dangerous beneath the vulnerability. Maybe this is exactly what I deserve. No one deserves to be abandoned like that. She was quiet for a long moment, studying me. You're very kind, Emma. Most people would have just ignored the crazy crying lady. I'm not most people. The words felt true, even as I spoke them for manipulation. And you're not crazy. You're hurt. There's a difference. Is there? But she squeezed my hand, a small gesture of gratitude. Thank you. Really. I didn't realize how much I needed someone to just listen. Anytime, I said, and meant it even as I hated what I was doing. That's what friends are for. The word seemed to surprise her. Friends? If you want to be. I'm new to the city, don't know many people. Could use a friend myself. Something shifted in her expression. Hope, maybe, or relief at not being alone anymore. I'd like that. When my shift ended, I found a text waiting. Excellent work. Keep building trust. The rest will follow. I deleted it without responding and walked home in the rain, letting the water soak through my jacket because I deserved to be uncomfortable. I deserved worse than that. After that day, everything changed. Irina started staying longer at the coffee shop, timing her visits with my shifts. We'd talk during my breaks. Small conversations at first, about movies and books, and the little mundane things that filled a life. But gradually, she began to open up more, sharing pieces of her past that I carefully filed away to report later. She'd grown up in Moscow, came to America when she was 20, met Victor at a nightclub 3 years ago. He'd been charming, attentive, successful. She'd fallen hard and fast, ignoring the red flags because she'd wanted so desperately to believe in the fairy tale. He worked for some very powerful people, she told me one afternoon, her voice dropping low, even though we were alone. I never asked questions, didn't want to know. But I wasn't stupid. I knew the money wasn't clean. What kind of people? I kept my tone casual, curious. She shook her head. The kind you don't ask about if you want to stay healthy. The kind who make people disappear when they become inconvenient. My blood ran cold. Was she talking about Volkov? Did she know who her boyfriend had stolen from? Is that why he ran? I asked carefully. Did he get in trouble with them? I think so. But he never told me anything concrete, just packed his bags one night and said he had to go away for a while. I thought he meant a business trip. Her voice cracked. I didn't realize he meant forever. I reported it all that night, feeling like Judas counting his silver pieces. Volkov's responses were clinical, analytical. She knows more than she's saying. Press harder. Find out if she has a way to contact him. I think she's genuinely in the dark, I texted back. Or she's a better liar than you are. The words stung, probably because they were meant to. I was a liar now. A good one, apparently, since Irina trusted me enough to cry on my shoulder and share her secrets. The fact that every word was being reported to the man who wanted to kill her boyfriend should have made me feel something. Guilt, shame, horror. But mostly I just felt numb. Sarah was out of the hospital now, recovering at her sister's place in Portland. The bills had been paid in full, just as promised. I visited her once, took a bus for 8 hours each way, and sat by her bed while she slept. She'd looked so peaceful, unaware of the price I'd paid for her life. "I'm sorry," I'd whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was apologizing to her or to myself. 3 weeks into my friendship with Irina, everything imploded. It was a Saturday evening. I'd finished my shift and was walking home when I saw the car, sleek, black, familiar. It pulled up beside me, the back window rolling down to reveal Volkov's face. "Get in." It wasn't a request. I climbed into the back seat, my heart pounding, trying to think what I'd done wrong. He waited until Anton pulled away from the curb before speaking. "Irina received a package today." "Did she mention it?" "No." We didn't talk much today. She seemed distracted. The package contained a burner phone and instructions to be at a specific location tomorrow night at midnight. Alone. My stomach dropped. "Victor?" "Almost certainly." He turned to face me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "This is what we've been waiting for. She'll go to meet him, and you're going to make sure I know exactly where and when." "How am I supposed to do that? I can't exactly ask her. You'll tell her you're worried about her, that you've noticed she's been acting strange. You'll offer to go with her for safety." "She'll refuse, but you'll insist on at least knowing where she'll be, in case something goes wrong." He made it sound so simple, so reasonable. "She trusts you now. She'll tell you. And then what? You'll just show up and kill Victor? What happens to Victor is none of your concern. Your job is to get me the location. After that, our arrangement is complete. You'll have your freedom." Freedom. The word sounded hollow. What about Irina? What about her? Will you hurt her? His eyes narrowed. "Are you developing a conscience, Emma? Now, of all times?" "I'm asking a question. If Irina is innocent, she has nothing to fear from me. If she knew what Victor was doing and helped him." He shrugged. "Then she's as guilty as he is." I thought about the woman who'd cried at the coffee shop, who'd shared her pain with me, who'd called me a friend. She doesn't know anything. Then prove it. Get me that location, and we'll find out exactly what Irina does and doesn't know. The car stopped outside my apartment building. Anton got out and opened my door, waiting. "You have until tomorrow afternoon," Volkov said. "Don't disappoint me." I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Irina's face, trusting, vulnerable, completely unaware that her new friend was a viper in disguise. By morning, I'd made a decision that was probably going to get me killed. I went to Costa's early, before my shift, and found Irina already there. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, her hands shaking as she lifted her coffee cup. "Emma." She seemed surprised to see me. "You're here early. I needed to talk to you." I slid into the seat across from her, my heart hammering. Something's wrong. I can feel it. And whatever it is, whatever you're planning to do tonight, I'm begging you. Don't. Her face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. You received something yesterday. A phone, maybe. Instructions. And now you're planning to meet someone. And Irina, I'm terrified that you're walking into a trap. How do you—" She stopped, her eyes widening with understanding and betrayal. "Oh my God, you're working for them. For him." The words hit like a physical blow. "Irina? How much did he pay you?" Her voice rose, drawing attention from other customers. "How much was my trust worth, Emma? Or should I call you something else? Is Emma even your real name? Please listen. I am listening. I'm listening to every lie you've ever told me, every fake smile, every manufactured moment of friendship." She stood abruptly, grabbing her bag. "You know what the really pathetic part is? I actually liked you. I actually thought—" Her voice broke. God, I'm such an idiot. You're not meeting Victor, I said desperately. It's Volkov. He set this up. He knows about the phone, knows about tonight. If you go, he'll kill you both. She froze. Why are you telling me this? Because despite everything, despite what I've done, I don't want to see you die. The truth of it surprised even me. Run, Irina. Take whatever money you have and run far away from here, from Victor, from Volkov, from all of it. For a moment something flickered in her eyes. Hope, maybe, or the possibility of survival. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. If I run, you die, she said flatly. Volkov doesn't tolerate failure. He'll know you warned me. I know. Then why? Because I'm tired of being a pawn in someone else's game. Because maybe if I save you, I can save something of myself too. She stared at me for a long moment, then reached into her bag and pulled out the burner phone. She placed it on the table between us. The meeting is at the old warehouse district. Pier 47. Midnight. She pushed the phone toward me. Take this to Volkov. Tell him I'll be there. Tell him whatever you need to tell him. Irina. I'm not running, Emma. Victor might be a thief and a coward, but he's my coward. If there's even a chance he's alive, I have to know. She stood, shouldering her bag. And if Volkov wants to kill me for being loyal, then at least I'll die as something other than a rat. She left, and I sat there with the phone in my hands, feeling the weight of the impossible choice I'd just been given. Save Irina and sign my own death warrant, or condemn her and live with the guilt forever. My phone buzzed. Volkov. Well, do you have the location? I looked at the burner phone, at the address Irina had given me, at the trap that was waiting to spring. And I typed, Pier 47, midnight. She'll be there. The hours before midnight crawled by like years. I reported to work because not showing up would have raised questions I couldn't answer. But my hands shook so badly that I spilled 3 drinks and broke a glass. Pete sent me home early, concerned I was coming down with something. He wasn't wrong. I was sick with guilt and fear and the growing certainty that I'd just condemned someone to death. Back at the apartment, I paced. The walls that had seemed like luxury 3 weeks ago now felt like a prison. I'd tried calling the hospital, hoping to hear Sarah's voice, to remember why I'd made this devil's bargain in the first place. But she was still in Portland, still recovering, still blissfully unaware that her medical bills had been paid with betrayal. At 11:30, I made a decision that was either brave or suicidal. I still haven't figured out which. I called a cab and gave the driver an address in the warehouse district. Not Pier 47, but close enough. He looked at me skeptically, a young woman in jeans and a jacket asking to be dropped off in one of the most dangerous parts of the city at night. But money was money. He took it and left me standing on a cracked sidewalk under a broken streetlight. The warehouses loomed around me like sleeping giants, their broken windows like empty eye sockets. I could smell the river, hear the distant sound of water lapping against the piers. Somewhere in this maze of concrete and rust, Irina was walking into a trap I'd helped set. I found Pier 47 by following the numbers painted on the buildings, faded and peeling but still visible, a warehouse with its loading dock doors hanging open, spilling yellow light onto the wet pavement. I could see figures moving inside. Guards, probably. Volkov's men, waiting. I should have turned around. Should have gone back to the apartment, locked the door, and pretended none of this was happening. Instead, I moved closer, keeping to the shadows, until I could see inside. The warehouse was mostly empty, just bare concrete floors and support pillars casting long shadows. In the center, under a hanging work light that swung slightly in the draft, stood Dmitry Volkov. He wore all black tonight, no suit jacket, just slacks and a fitted shirt that made him look less like a businessman and more like what he really was, a predator. Anton and 3 other men flanked him, all armed, all watching the entrance. And then I saw her. Irina walked through the loading dock doors at exactly midnight, her chin up, her shoulders back, every inch of her radiating defiance despite the fear I could see in her eyes. She wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, thin and nervous-looking, with Victor's face from the photos I'd seen. He'd come, despite everything, despite the danger. He'd come for her. Victor Kozlov. Volkov's voice carried across the warehouse, calm and cold. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about me. I haven't forgotten anything. Victor's voice shook. He was terrified, barely holding himself together. I have the money. All of it. What I took, plus interest. Just let us go and you'll never see either of us again. The money. Volkov laughed. A sound without humor. You think this is about money, isn't it? Irina stepped forward, drawing Volkov's attention. Isn't that what this is always about with men like you? Power and money and ego? Men like me. Volkov's eyes glittered. You think you understand what kind of man I am, Irina? You who've spent 3 years warming the bed of a thief and a coward? Victor made a mistake. Victor stole from me. And then, when he realized his mistake, instead of coming to me like a man and accepting his punishment, he ran. He hid. He let you take the weight of his crimes while he cowered in whatever hole he'd found. Volkov moved closer, circling them like a shark. That's not a mistake. That's betrayal. Then punish me. Victor's voice cracked. I'm the one who stole from you. I'm the one who ran. Irina had nothing to do with it. Let her go. How noble. Volkov stopped circling, standing directly in front of Irina now. Did you help him, Irina? Did you count the money while he stole it? Did you plan your escape together? No. Her voice was steady, clear. I didn't know anything until he was already gone. Prove it. How? Volkov gestured to one of his men, who stepped forward with a gun. He placed it in Irina's hand, then stepped back. Victor betrayed me, Volkov said quietly. He stole from me, lied to me, made a fool of me in front of my organization. The punishment for that is death. But I'm a fair man, Irina. If you truly had nothing to do with his crimes, prove it. Kill him yourself, and you walk away free. The warehouse went silent. Even the sound of the river seemed to fade. Irina stood there with the gun in her hands, staring at Victor, who'd gone the color of ash. Irina, no, Victor started. Shut up. Her voice was hard, flat. After everything you've put me through, you don't get to tell me what to do. She raised the gun. Victor closed his eyes, and I couldn't watch anymore. Stop! I stepped out of the shadows, my voice echoing off the concrete walls. Every head turned toward me. Volkov's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or anger that I dared to interfere. Emma? Irina lowered the gun slightly. What are you doing here? Saving you from making a mistake you can't take back. I walked forward on legs that threatened to give out, forcing myself to maintain eye contact with Volkov. She didn't know. Victor told me himself. He kept everything from her to protect her. She's innocent. Victor told you. Volkov's voice was dangerously soft. And when exactly did you have this conversation with Victor? The lie died in my throat. I had no answer that wouldn't damn me. You warned her, he continued, moving toward me now with that same predatory grace. After I specifically told you to simply get the location, you decided to play hero. Tell me, Emma, what exactly did you think would happen when you betrayed me? I thought... My voice shook. I thought maybe if I told the truth, if I admitted what I'd done, you might what? Show mercy? He laughed, and it was the coldest sound I'd ever heard. I don't show mercy to people who betray me. Ask Victor how well that works out. Then kill me. The words came out stronger than I felt. But let them go. Please. Irina didn't know. Victor's willing to return the money, and I'm the one who lied to you. I'm the one who broke our agreement. Yes, you did. He was close enough now that I could smell cedar and smoke, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. You lied. You manipulated. You played both sides, thinking you were clever enough to outsmart me. I know I wasn't. And yet... He reached out, his hand cupping my jaw, forcing me to meet his eyes. You're standing here, willing to die to protect people you barely know. People who wouldn't do the same for you. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, the right thing. He said it like the concept was foreign. And what about our agreement? What about your friend Sarah and her medical bills? What about the apartment, the clothes, the money I gave you? Was none of that worth keeping your word? It was worth everything, I whispered. But not someone's life, not Irina's, not even Victor's. He studied me for a long moment, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone in a gesture that would have been tender in any other context. Then he released me and stepped back. Anton. The big man stepped forward. I braced myself for the bullet, the blade, whatever end Volkov had chosen for me. Instead, Volkov said, "Take Victor. He'll work off his debt in our eastern operations. 5 years, no contact with the outside world. If he runs again, kill everyone he's ever cared about, including Irina." Victor's face crumpled with relief and terror. Thank you. Thank you. Get him out of my sight." Volkov waved dismissively, and Anton hauled Victor away. The thief was still babbling gratitude as they disappeared into the shadows. Volkov turned to Irina. "You're free to go. But if I ever see you in this city again, if you ever try to contact Victor, if you ever breathe a word of this to anyone, I understand." Irina's voice was barely above a whisper. She looked at me, her eyes swimming with tears. "Emma, go," I said gently. "Just go. Be safe." She ran, her footsteps echoing until they faded into nothing. And then it was just me and Volkov and his remaining guards in the warehouse, the hanging light still swaying overhead, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "You surprise me, Emma Chen." Volkov circled me slowly. "I thought I had you figured out. Desperate, broke, willing to do anything to survive. But you're not that simple, are you? I don't know what I am anymore. Honest, apparently. Stupidly, recklessly honest." He stopped in front of me. "Do you have any idea what you've cost me tonight? The message this sends to my organization? That you're not a monster?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. He smiled. A real smile this time, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Oh, I'm absolutely a monster, Emma. Never doubt that. But even monsters have rules, codes." He gestured around the empty warehouse. "This wasn't about the money Victor stole. It was never about the money. It was about loyalty, respect, the understanding that in my world betrayal has consequences. And what are the consequences for me? That depends." He moved closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "Are you going to betray me again?" The honest answer was that I didn't know. That I couldn't promise anything when every choice felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss. "Never lie to me, Emma. I value honesty above almost everything else." His hand found my jaw again, gentler this time. "So tell me the truth. If I asked you to do this again, would you?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to be the kind of person who uses people, even if it means..." My voice caught. "Even if it means losing everything." "Everything." He seemed amused by the word. "What do you think you're losing? The apartment? The money? Whatever arrangement we had? And if I told you those things are yours regardless? That our arrangement is over, just as I promised, and you're free to go?" I stared at him, searching for the trap. "Why would you do that? Because you kept your end of the bargain. You got me the location, and because of that I have Victor. The fact that you also warned Irina and tried to play hero, he shrugged. That's almost admirable in its stupidity. So I can just leave? You can. The apartment is yours for the next 6 months, paid in full. After that, you're on your own. Sarah's medical bills remain cleared. And you'll never hear from me again. He paused, his eyes searching mine. Unless you choose otherwise. Choose otherwise? I need someone I can trust, Emma. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me the truth, even when it's dangerous. Someone who values honesty over self-preservation. His thumb traced my lower lip, a gesture so intimate it made my breath catch. Someone like you. You want me to work for you. I want you to consider it, not as an informant or a spy, but as... He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. Someone who keeps me honest, who reminds me that there's a difference between power and cruelty. I don't understand. You will, or you won't, and you'll walk away, and we'll never speak again. He stepped back, giving me space. Think about it. You have my number. If you decide you want something more than surviving from one waitressing job to the next, call me. If not... He gestured toward the open loading dock doors. The choice is yours. I should have run. Should have taken the out he was offering and never looked back, but something in his eyes stopped me. Something I couldn't quite name. What if I say yes? What exactly would this arrangement entail? Dinners? Conversations? Moments of brutal honesty when I need them most? The corner of his mouth lifted, and in return, you'd have security, protection, a life where you don't have to worry about where your next meal is coming from. That sounds an awful lot like being kept. Does it? He moved closer again, and this time I didn't back away. Or does it sound like being valued for something other than your willingness to lie and manipulate? I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him that this was just another form of manipulation, another cage dressed up as freedom. But looking into his eyes, seeing the genuine curiosity there, the interest that went beyond simple control, I couldn't quite convince myself it was all a lie. I need time, I said finally, to think, to figure out what I want. Take all the time you need. He pulled a card from his pocket, heavy cardstock with nothing but a phone number embossed in gold. When you decide, call me. Or don't. The choice has always been yours, Emma. I just hope you'll choose wisely. He left then, his guards following, their footsteps fading until I was alone in the warehouse, with just the swaying light and my racing thoughts. 3 days later, I stood in Sarah's hospital room in Portland, watching her sleep peacefully, free of tubes and monitors and the machines that had kept her alive. Her sister had stepped out for coffee, giving us privacy I wasn't sure I deserved. I did something terrible, I whispered. Even though Sarah couldn't hear me, I lied and manipulated and betrayed someone's trust. All to save you. Sarah's eyes opened slowly, still cloudy with medication but aware. Emma? Hey. I took her hand, feeling tears burn behind my eyes. You're awake. You look terrible. Her voice was hoarse but warm. What happened? Long story. I'll tell you someday. When it doesn't hurt so much. She squeezed my fingers weakly. The doctor said someone paid my bills. Was that you? In a way. I swallowed hard. I made a deal. Did things I'm not proud of, but you're alive. And that's what matters. Emma, don't. Don't thank me or tell me it's okay. Just get better. Go back to Portland with your sister. Start over somewhere safe, and forget about me for a while. I could never forget you. Try. I kissed her forehead, tasting salt from my own tears. Please. Just be happy and healthy and far away from the mess I've made. I left before she could argue, before I could break down completely. In the parking lot, I pulled out the card Volkov had given me. The number gleaming in the afternoon sun. I could call. accept whatever twisted arrangement he was offering, trade my freedom for security and the constant company of a man who was equal parts fascinating and terrifying. Or I could throw the card away, take the 6 months of rent he'd given me, and build something real, something honest, something that was entirely my own. My phone was in my hand. The card felt heavy between my fingers. In the end, I did what I should have done from the beginning. I chose myself. I threw the card in the trash and drove back to the city, to the apartment that was mine for 6 more months, to Costa's where Pete had promised me full-time hours, to a life that was messy and uncertain, but entirely mine to control. Volkov never called, never texted, never sent Anton to check on me. He'd meant what he said. The choice was mine, and he'd respect it. But sometimes, late at night when the apartment felt too quiet, I'd wonder what might have happened if I'd made a different choice, if I'd called that number, accepted that offer, stepped into the darkness with a man who'd seen the worst of me and still called me honest. I'd wonder. But I wouldn't regret, because I'd learned something in those weeks of lying and manipulation, something that no amount of money or security could replace. I'd learned that I was stronger than I thought, that I could face impossible choices and still choose kindness, that I could be bought, yes, but I couldn't be kept. 6 months later, I moved to a smaller apartment I could afford on my own. Costas had promoted me to shift manager. Sarah visited from Portland, healthy and whole and grateful in ways that made my throat tight. I built a life, a real one, an honest one, and I never looked back. But sometimes, on rainy nights when the city lights blurred through the water on my windows, I could still smell cedar and smoke, could still feel the ghost of a touch on my jaw, gentle despite the danger behind it. And I'd allow myself, just for a moment, to wonder what he was doing, if he thought of me, if he'd found someone else to keep him honest, or if he'd slipped back into the darkness without anyone to remind him of the light. Then morning life, free, whole, mine. It was enough. It had to be.